It is so great chatting to my next guest, former UFC champion, commentator, and pretty much does it all. It is Pat Miletich joining me here on the program. Pat, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, James. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Hey, it's great to talk to you. A lot going on right now, but I wanted to start first with Caged Aggression. They've got the pay-per-view cards coming up 2 nights. What can you tell us about this great promotion that's really going to be sort of the future of MMA?
Mike Goodwin with Caged Aggression has done a great job of making a local show look like a much bigger production. And, given that, during the shutdown of COVID that's happened so many times and off and on and off and on, there's a lot of athletes that are available that normally would not be available to come to a place like Davenport, Iowa and fight. And so the talent is quite impressive. There's been a lot of, UFC vets, Bellator vets, a lot of those folks that have shown up on these cards, and people from a lot of top gyms around the country as well, and that's the nice thing about it is, on one hand, COVID has hurt a lot of people and hurt us in some ways, but it's also helped us in some ways.
Right. Well, it's great to see, more opportunities for local fighters. And I love the fact that you're doing 2 nights in a row, gives a lot of opportunities for fighters to get out there. You mentioned some Bellator vets. I know Darian Abbey's on this card. I taken on Lorenz. Who are some of the fighters and some of the fights that people should be paying attention to leading up to this card?
The thing is I don't pick particular fights except main events only because the first fight of the night could be the best fight of the night. You know what I mean?
That's true.
I don't want to short sell anybody. There's a million fights this on that weekend. Tune into it. You can go to cagedaggression.tv to order it, and it's just a tad cheaper than everybody else. So it's easy on the pocketbook. But Lorenz versus Abbey, just because the 15 first round KOs from Lorenz, and Abbey's got 11 KO or TKO wins in the first round. That spells disaster for somebody generally is what that does. And so it's going to be very exciting. Both guys are training very hard, quality guys. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see those guys. But there's just a lot of talented kids here in the Midwest that don't get seen enough. And I think when people tune into these 2 nights, they're going to find out just how tough these guys are.
And how much are regional fighters hitting you up? Because obviously, 2 events, you're seeing also just, a lot of fighters needing those opportunities with COVID. Like you mentioned, for a lot of people, there was a point when they didn't know when they'd fight next. So are you just, I know, you're just sort of, have you been hearing that a lot of fighters have been kind of, gravitating towards these cards just with the fact that, it's a good opportunity for them?
Well, and the thing that we do too is we offer, these athletes get their own promo codes so that they get paid per buy that they get under their promo code. Now, that's pretty unique, I think, for a lot of organizations, and I think it's fair. I think that you're not going to see the UFC do the promo codes generally,
right?
But I can tell you this: I think it's fair to the athletes. I think it goes down those lines of fairness to the athletes, as far as revenue split and things like that.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. One name that I have to mention on here, Matt Hughes' son is going to be competing on this card. I know he had his amateur debut earlier this year. It's funny, I just talked to Dan Lambert yesterday mentioning how he's been training down at American Top Team. What can you tell us a little bit about, this is going to be his second amateur fight going in here?
Well, of course, coming from Matt Hughes' stock, he's going to be very strong. He's a very agile kid. He has better striking than his dad. Matt hit very hard, but he was not a super fluent boxing guy, right? Mm-hmm. He was so powerful and such a good wrestler and such a good grappler that he could generally figure out a way to beat anybody just with those attributes. And then when you got hit by him, it felt like a sledgehammer, which I certainly probably misspell words because of him to this day.
Do you see a lot of similarities between Matt and him in terms of, you mentioned they're different styles, but, you obviously see something in the lineage a little bit when you're having a son and a father sort of side by side like that?
The genetics make it so, right?
Yeah.
And he does move similar in his wrestling, very solid, very good base, very knowledgeable in the wrestling world, and is capable of getting those takedowns, but he's also capable, if he wants to stuff takedowns, of keeping the fight on his feet and being exciting if he wants.
We talked about Matt Hughes, of course, a big name from your old, gym, the Miletich Fighting Systems. Another big name that came from that gym just got a win this past weekend at UFC 266, Robbie Lawler. How excited were you to see him get back in the win column? I thought Robbie looked great. He came out really aggressive, and ultimately Nick Diaz wasn't able to continue after the 3rd round.
When Robbie's on, he's on. I think with Rob, at this point in his career, and it's been that way a couple of years, because the climb that he took from that first fight with Josh Koscheck in the UFC when he went back in, dropped from 185, and I had a pretty good talk with him. And I said, hey, I go, you're fighting at 185. You're fighting guys that are cutting down from 225. You don't belong in this weight division. None of them are running you over. None of them are hurting you. But you're not going to be a world champion. You're not going to make millions of dollars doing this. So cut down to 170, go back to the UFC, win the world title, make a couple $1 million here and there, whatever you got to do, and take care of your family. That's what you need to do. And so I think he listened to myself and several other guys who were kind of telling him the same thing. But from that fight with Josh Koscheck up until he won that world title, I mean, he had to slay the who's who. I mean, you talk about murderer's row that he went through. I mean, I think that's one of the most impressive runs I've ever seen in my life in MMA. I mean, it was impressive. So, but after that, you get to the top of the mountain, and especially after you go through those types of guys, there's a little bit of wear and tear mentally, physically, spiritually, and it just is what it is. And so I think that it took a fight like Nick Diaz, for him to get up and be able to go in there and truly train hard. And I think he even said it himself, it motivated him to get out of bed.
Yeah, no, we certainly saw it. It looked like vintage Robbie in that first round. Have you spoken to Robbie since the fight, since it took place on Saturday?
Nah, I just try not to bug him. I mean, the last time I held pads for him was before he fought Koscheck.
That's right.
And he asked me to train him for that fight. And at the time I was working for 3 television networks, Showtime, ESPN, and Access TV all at the same time. And I said, I can't do that. It would be an injustice to do that. I mean, it's just not fair. I said, just, go see Dan Lambert down there to American Top Team. They've got the bodies for you to work with, all of that. Cause I was transitioning out of coaching at that point. And, I still love Robbie just as much as I did, at that point. And just very happy for him. But I just don't bug him that much. I'll text him once in a while, tell him I love him, something like that.
It's great. Your thoughts on Nick Diaz's performance? I think it was a little bit unexpected from a lot of people to see that he wasn't able to continue, but Robbie was landing some really good shots. It's also understandable from that perspective.
Diaz threw a massive amount of punches in 2 rounds. I think it was like the third most punches in a 5-round fight, but in 2 rounds. Right. Yeah. So that's huge volume. And Robbie was throwing back, I think, 131. So, that's a lot of output. And Robbie said that in that post-fight, I saw the post-fight interview. Somebody sent it to me, and Rob said, I hit hard. That's just the way it is. And when you're trading with somebody that hits that hard, that's how Robbie looked in the gym when he was 18 years old. And Absolutely. I'd always ask him, I asked him one time after he fought Diaz, I said, why do you go out and swing wild in fights when in the gym you stay composed and pick everybody apart? And he goes, I just want to get out of there, man. I just don't want to be in there.
Right. Yeah. Understandably, you don't get paid by the hour, right? So. Right.
But now, he's got so much experience in so many tough fights that he's capable of just standing there in front of people and picking them apart. Right.
Do you think Robbie should fight again? And the reason I bring that up is because, coming off a win, I know there could be other fights for him, but it's very rare to retire on top with a win there. I don't know your thoughts on Robbie's future going forward.
Well, I think Robbie's a very, very difficult fight for anybody, and is certainly capable of beating any of the guys at the top. Robbie just has to, it comes down to how bad Robbie wants to be there. If Robbie really wants to be there, and really wants it, if it's something that's a very motivational fight for him, look out on the other side. If not, then I would say no.
Okay. Another big fight on that card was Valentina Shivshanko. I don't know if you caught the entire card, but just a dominant performance over Lauren Murphy. Do you think anyone's going to beat her at 125? I think the only challenge for her right now, at least from my vantage point, is her moving up and fighting Amanda Nunes again.
Yeah, that's the fight to make, I think. And she's just probably too small, maybe for Nunes, but it was a competitive fight. The last time I saw those two go at it, she's the best. I think she's the best all around fighter in the world, man or woman. I really do. I truly think that. Besides, of course, Khabib. Khabib's undefeated and has proven himself. But I think she's the most well-balanced fighter. She's the most talented. She's the most certainly honed and precise with striking and grappling.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And of course, the main event was an all-time classic: Alexander Volkanovski, Brian Ortega. Ortega looked like he had Volkanovski finished in that
Right.
third round, but was able to get out and get it done. There was some question as to whether the fight should have been stopped in that fourth round when Ortega was sort of being helped up to his corner. What was your take on that, or do you think they made the right choice in letting it go 5 rounds?
Well, unless it's really blatant and overboard, I mean, a fighter should have to get up on his own, under his own power and get back to the corner. So yeah, I mean, if the referee would have stopped it, then he would have been justified in doing so per the rules. But you know, you're there as a corner man and a referee and a doctor to protect the athlete. I wasn't there. You know, I couldn't observe up close. So, and those guys know Ortega better than I do, of course, because they train him and train with him. So that's, you know, that's their call.
Big fight in your old division, welterweight, coming up here. It's the rematch between Camaro Usman and Colby Covington. How do you see that fight playing out? Because that's, you know, it's interesting. Colby's given Camaro his toughest test to date. He was finishing that fight, but a lot of people are really interested in that rematch.
Colby's very talented, very tough. He's got a gas tank. I mean, that's incredible. He's impressed me a lot. I would say, though, that Camaro has improved so much, you know, over the past few years, and he was good going into the UFC. But Camaro's got the power. Camaro's got the power. He's got the wrestling power over Colby. He's got the punching power over Colby. And when it comes down to it, I mean, if somebody punches me in the face and I don't respect their power, I'm going to walk through them, right? And I think that, you know, I think Camaro understands. Colby does hit hard. There's no doubt about that. But he does not hit like Camaro Usman. He just simply doesn't. So I give Usman probably, I think he finishes him again.
We mentioned American Top Team. Dustin Poirier is going to be, looks like, fighting for the lightweight title against Charles Oliveira. Just your thoughts on that fight. That's a really competitive matchup between two really outstanding lightweights.
That's a tough one to call. They're both incredible athletes, incredible fighters, very technical, certainly durable, and we've seen that out of both of them. Poirier, I give him the nod on his experience. You know, I probably, in terms of quality of overall opponents, he may have faced tougher opponents, and a lot of times in matchups like that, I always kind of lean toward the guy that has the tougher opponents, which kind of makes your game just a little bit tighter.
Yeah, no, for sure. 50-50 fight like that. Can't disagree with that. Just a few more quick questions and we'll get you out of here. I don't know if you saw the news last Friday. Unfortunate news, what's happened with John Jones. Some details have come out today. Some alleged domestic violence. I don't know if you caught the story before you hopped on here, but just your thoughts on John, just, you know, again, getting in trouble right after the Hall of Fame ceremony with the UFC.
You know, it's unfortunate. And I don't, you know, I've seen a lot of people, including myself, make mistakes, right? Mm-hmm. I've made mistakes. I've got no reason to point fingers at anybody. He's got demons. A lot of fighters do have demons. Some of us deal with them better than others. I've had to, you know, have some talks with some good trusted friends and go through some tough times myself. So, you know, I wish John Jones nothing but the best. I hope he can, you know, figure out what it is that's causing him the heartache and the reasons for him going out and doing what he's doing, because it happens. I've seen it happen thousands of times to a lot of really good people. And so he just, I think ultimately needs to understand that he's not invincible. Mm-hmm. Accept whatever happened in his past, you know, move forward. Don't let it haunt him anymore, because that's the sort of, you know, the mindset that can end up leading to making mistakes like that.
Do you think this is the final straw if he is charged with these allegations? Do you think this is where the UFC says, okay, enough's enough? Or do you think they'll still keep him around because he's a big draw?
Well, I mean, money talks, you know, money talks. And I would say, you know, if I was his brother, I'd say, hey man, let's have a sit down, let's talk. And, you know, whether it's go to treatment, whether it's, you know, quantum timeline hypnosis, I've found is the most incredible thing for solving problems from the past when you were a kid and things that you don't even remember that have happened. Is I've got a good buddy who's his name's Nick Spahn, who is a quantum timeline hypnotist, and I tell you what, it works. It really does work. So if you can find somebody that's really good at that, and going through your entire life where you can actually remember moments of your life that are causing problems, whether it's fears of abandonment, fears of poverty, fears of this, fears of that. You know, that stuff causes problems in adult life. It just does. And when you look around at society, you can see that everybody acts the way they do based on their childhood. And a lot of people have not made those adjustments. And look, John's probably dealing with the same thing. He really is.
Before we go, got to mention this Jake Paul and Tyrone Woodley thing. You're an old school MMA guy. Did you watch the fight? What do you think of all this with these YouTubers wanting to box these MMA fighters?
You know, I think Jake Paul's got enough of a draw. He's smart, you know, and I think Woodley is 1,000 times a better athlete. I think that Jake Paul, you know, against somebody who was staying busy and a world-class boxer in any remote sense of the word, you know, would have put Jake Paul, you know, when Jake Paul misses a punch, he misses a punch. Yeah. He's so out of position, he should be getting crushed. But Tyrone, obviously, he likes to play it safe. He's a bomb, one-punch kind of guy, and that doesn't work well in boxing. You've got to be able to throw combinations. So, look, Jake Paul, you know, with the millions of YouTube followers he's got, he's leveraging it and making a ton of money. And look, if I'm Tyrone Woodley, I don't know how much he got paid on the last one. Do you know?
It was a lot. I know, obviously, more than he would make in the UFC, right? Mind you, that's not saying much, but still, it's, you know, it was a good chunk of money from what I heard. So,
couple million, I'm assuming.
I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd buy a bass boat and go fishing and say I had my fun.
There you go. Well, the one thing we can credit Jake Paul, though, at least he's kind of speaking out a bit on fighter pay, which is something that, you know, a lot of people don't have the platform to do. And, you know, what is sort of your take on a lot of fighters now? You know, we had Jared Cannon here a few weeks ago. We have, you know, some other fighters coming out now talking about pay. At least they're kind of bringing that to the forefront, because I don't know your thoughts on sort of the UFC pay structure right now.
Well, you know, that's going to be up to the athletes. And if I'm one of the top guys getting the pay-per-view draws and getting money per, you know, dollars per purchase on pay-per-view, and I'm making a king's ransom, do I really feel the urge to stand up and put my neck on the line for the rest of the athletes that aren't there? And I would say that MMA is the most capitalistic sport on the planet. You know, the best guys make it to the top. It's just the way it is. The guys that market themselves the way they see fit, and, you know, whether they're a bad guy, the white hat or the black hat, whatever it is, you know, I don't see it. You know, I spoke out as a champion, and Jens Pulver spoke out as a champion, and Jens walked away. He and Frank Shamrock are still the only two guys to walk away with world title belts and go to different organizations. And obviously, Jens has been kind of brought back into the fold. Frank certainly is, you know, they've kind of erased him from history. But, you know, I was at odds with Dana White for that and many other reasons over a period of time. That's all done with, you know, many years ago now. But, you know, I spoke out about it. You know, we weren't, you know, back then as a world champion, I wasn't really making millions of dollars, you know. So I felt it was important. But again, it's the most capitalistic sport in the world. If you want to make millions of dollars, kick everybody's ass. It's the way it is. Absolutely. Well said, champ. Pat, thanks again for doing this. Anything you want to plug before we get out of here? Caged Aggression, where they can find the pay-per-view and everything else. The floor is yours, sir. Yeah, they can go. Yeah. So October 15th, 16th, it's cagedaggression.tv. They can go there and order it for a fraction of the price of any other pay-per-view you're going to find. And as well as if people want 45% more oxygen at a cellular level from a totally organic plant-based product, I sell Black Oxygen Organics. That's given a lot of athletes a lot of endurance. You will not test positive. It's, like I said, totally organic and plant-based. There's several athletes on it in the UFC right now, world-class ultra runners and swimmers and a lot of people like that. So they can go to blackoxygenorganics.com/PJ Miletich and pick up that powder and change their endurance forever.